Hi, it's Gary. Welcome to today's video. This quarter's motivational statement is behind me here. One small step. It's a small sentence. It's got a lot of power behind it. When we look back to 1969, Neil Armstrong, when he first set foot on the moon, he declared, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." This one small step, it was a culmination of years of work by a large number of people. The result? The first footstep on the moon. But it's not just for these big world-changing projects. One small step is a very good guide to everyday life. Now, I don't know about you. I've got loads of different projects on the go at any one time. Some of these, they're simple things that I do regularly. Make a cup of tea. If you look at it, it's a little project, but we don't think about it in that respect. But then we've got other larger projects, and they really push me, and hopefully they push you, to grow and do things that I never thought that I could do. Regardless of the project, they all have one thing in common. They all start with one small step. Making a cup of tea, that one small step is putting the kettle on. The idea is that these small steps, they're easy to do. And quite often, this one small step, it is actually do nothing. It's to sit down, spend some time thinking. What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? What's the project about? Really dig down and think about the project. Think about it on how you want to relate to it, how you want to achieve it. Once you've done this, you're able to start to break that project down into a series of smaller steps. Now, it'll take a while to do. Most projects, if it's a smallish project, it might only be 5-10 minutes. Other projects, I know it will take quite a while. But by doing this, you're going to reduce the amount of time the project takes in the long run. So I've sat down, I've come up with a series of small steps. Now what I do is I do a review of them. I look at those steps. Do I understand what that step is? Can I break that down into even smaller steps? The whole point of this is I'm trying to create a list of as many small steps that each are easy to do, but they add together and build on each other to let me complete the big things. Here's an example. I've got a big project. I've decided I'm going to write a book. Sounds absolutely terrifying, doesn't it? So I sit down. I think about it. The first thing I think about, well, what do I want to write a book about? Is it going to be a book on productivity? Is it going to be a book on note-taking? Is it going to be a novel? As I'm doing this thinking, I start making notes. Now, there's loads of different ways to do that. I can cover that in a separate video if you want. If you want me to break it down even further, drop a comment down below. But the two main ways are either mind maps or outlines. Personally, I'm a text person. I like to make an outline. Now, these notes, this outline, it's not for me to share with anyone. It's there purely for me. It's to let me to start to capture my thinking, to start to organise what I'm going to be doing, to start documenting the little steps I need, and it lets me also start to bring the whole thing into focus. So with my little project, I start thinking of the steps and I write them down. For the book I'm going to write, what I do is I'll come up with a working title. The title drives the book. I come up with a list of chapters, and for each chapter, I give it a title. Once I've got that list of chapters, I then go back and I start to look at each of the chapters in turn. What do I want the chapter to be about? What information do I need? What research do I need to undertake? I capture all of these items with each one becoming a separate small step. And after I've gone through this, I'll have a massive list of steps. Quite often for most of my projects, that initial list, it's well over 100. And you look at it and it looks scary. My next small step, is I enter these steps that I've come up with into my action management system. This is so I've got them all in a central repository. And as I'm doing this, I'm able to organise the actions, these steps, into a rough order that I think I need to be working on them. You know, it's like I can't start writing until I've got rough notes. I can't start rough notes until I've done my research. I can't do my research until, well, I've thought about it a bit more. By putting the steps into a rough order, it means I'm tackling things in the right way. But I've still got a scary list. It might be ordered, still massive though, isn't it? So I've started with one small step. That's to think about the project. Now I've got a plan of action to help me achieve it. As I've already said, you might be saying to yourself, well, it's a waste of time. I don't have time to do this sitting down and thinking and planning. And you're right to make that comment. But I usually find this step is quick. As I said, generally for most of my projects, which aren't massive projects, I get a cup of coffee or a cup of tea in my Spider-Man mug. I sit down. It takes me about 10 minutes. So by the time I've finished my drink, I've got my plan. Now for larger projects, it's going to involve an awful lot more steps. But for a larger project, I know this. I schedule time to think about it. And I might schedule an hour. I usually find more than an hour at a time is too much because your brain starts to go foggy. And I may end up doing 2 or 3 of these 1 hours, and I might do them over multiple days. The thing that I found though by doing this, even for the simple projects, by thinking about it, understanding the project, understanding what I'm trying to achieve, it actually speeds up delivery. I've done my thinking. I've taken the time to understand the project. I've built a plan. Then I follow that plan. And as I said, the first thing is to hide everything but the first step. I don't really need to worry too much about all the other actions because until I've finished that first step, well, I can't even move on and start the second one. Why worry about it if you can't do anything about it? Worry about the actions you can be taking at that particular time. So I take that one small step. I perform the action. When I'm reading the action, if I don't understand it, if I think, well, this is a bit complex, I repeat the whole process and I break it down into some smaller steps. The idea is you just keep iterating through breaking each thing down into smaller steps until you get the smallest step that makes sense to you. As I've said, a project to make a cup of tea, I wouldn't write it out. I would just go and make a cup of tea because I know what it is. I know what it involves. My project to write a book, I don't know what it involves. I need to think about that. Break things down into small steps that you can achieve. Break things down into small steps that you can easily take. Once one action, one step, has been completed, well, I can then move on to the next one. And I keep repeating this until I've finished the project. And this is why I find the phrase one small step to be so powerful. It's all about achieving big things. Not by taking big steps, but rather by taking lots of small steps that I can easily achieve. And these steps, they each build on the previous one, and that's what allows the big projects that I never thought I could do to be completed. What projects have you got in the line? What projects are you struggling with? Why not take the time, now you've watched the video, think about those projects and start breaking them down into smaller steps. Capture those steps. I mean, breaking them down into steps and never capturing them and never following them doesn't really help. Think, capture, action. You'll be surprised how much you can achieve. Please drop a comment down below. Have you used this technique? Have you used a similar technique? I'd love to get your thoughts and any comments on it. Please hit the thumbs up button. Every time you like, every time you comment, just helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so that you can get new videos as I release them. I'll talk to you again soon.